He's not one to shy away from saying what he thinks. Today, I welcome Judge Andrew Napolitano to Off the Grid. He's Fox News senior judicial analyst. His latest book is Theodore and Woodrow: How Two American Presidents Destroyed Constitutional Freedom, and it's out in all the stores now. Welcome, Judge Napolitano, to Off the Grid. Judge, it's great to have you on my show for a change.
Governor, it's good to be with you anywhere, on the grid or off.
Hey, I want to say something now, because you're a libertarian, and I consider myself one also. But I think the word libertarian is being hijacked by the far right now, because in my opinion, I'm fiscally conservative, but I'm socially liberal. I think most libertarians are all socially liberal. We don't care about gay marriage. Gay marriage is fine with us on all the social issues, a woman's right to choose in birth control and all that. I think fiscally we're conservative, but socially we're very liberal.
Well, I'm with you on everything you said except abortion. Let's just put that aside for a moment. I agree with you profoundly on your concerns about the far right hijacking the terminology. I mean, people have been hijacking our terminology for 100 years. 100 years ago, we were called liberals, people who believed in human freedom, people who believed in the primacy of the individual over the power of the state. And then the liberals, the big government progressives, liked that word, and they took it from us, and we became libertarians. Now the word libertarian has become so in vogue that even our former friends on the right are trying to use it. To me, it almost doesn't matter what we're called. We know what we stand for. And our people, the people who agree with us on the primacy of the individual over the state, will see right through those guys on the right wing of the Republican Party who are trying to use our nomenclature.
Well, I hope so. Now, you came out strongly against the Arizona anti-gay bill this week. Why?
Because it would have created lawfully two classes of people in the state of Arizona, and the Constitution does not permit the government to make those classes. Before Brown versus Board of Education in 1954, and before the Civil Rights Act of 1964, a person who ran a public accommodation, whether it's a hotel or a restaurant or a florist or a bakery, could refuse to do business with anybody who walked in the door for any reason without stating a reason. That is the old-fashioned, traditional, natural law right to control your own property and to refuse to do business with whomever you wanted. But since the civil rights revolution of the 50s and the 60s, the ability to reject people because of their color, and eventually because of their age, and eventually because of their religion and their gender and their political views, has been taken away from property owners. To give them that right with respect to sexual orientation sends us back into those dark days where we have different classes of Americans, and that cannot be done under the color of law.
Now, do you think the tides are changing in regards to gay marriage? Are we becoming more socially conscious as a nation? And what about it as a government?
You know, Governor, there's a half dozen federal court opinions, all of recent vintage, like within the past year or so, invalidating the provisions in state constitutions which prohibit same-sex marriage. And some of these opinions are all over the place as to their reasoning. But the two or three that appeal to me, and I suggest to you and to those watching us the most, are those that simply state this: it is none of the government's business who someone marries. One should not need the permission of one's family or one's neighbors or of the government to choose a mate. I think that simple value is sweeping the nation, and the generation that succeeds you and me in this movement of which we are a part will accept that as naturally as we have accepted the eradication of race from the government's ability to make decisions.
You've called Obama an imperial president. Explain that one to me.
He has, listen, almost all presidents, even the sainted Thomas Jefferson, to some extent have exceeded the authority given to them in the Constitution. And each president seems to do it more than his predecessor, but President Obama has taken it to the ultimate extreme, where he has argued and attempted to do so articulately and rationally, that he, on a whim, Governor, can decide which Americans he will kill. He claims he has written laws to govern his own killing. He doesn't write the laws under the Constitution, only the Congress can. Whatever he's written, we can't see it, but he claims that in private he follows those rules. This is absurd. This is something that would please Joe Stalin and Adolf Hitler, who practiced this on their own. So because he has gone beyond George Bush's, I can arrest whoever I want, incarcerate them without a trial, and I can torture whoever I want. Because he's gone to the I can kill whoever I want, he's taken on the trappings of an emperor, and hence the reason I called him an imperial president. And if I may,
Wow.
Governor, one of the most reprehensible aspects of this, equally as reprehensible is his claim that he can kill, is the utter damning silence by the Congress and by the courts as he does this. We have three branches of government. The other two could gang up on him and stop him in a heartbeat, and they've done nothing to stop these murders.
You know, I think the slippery slope started with George Bush and 9/11. That's when all of this began, and now it just keeps growing. It's like an avalanche of snow coming down. It's gaining momentum and getting larger and larger, and our president's taking more and more liberties as we go. What's the next president going to do if this one's doing this and Bush did before him?
I don't know what it will be, and I could not agree with you more on 9/11. You were kind enough to mention my most recent book, in which I argue that big government, as we understand it today, began in the progressive era with a Republican and a Democrat, Theodore Roosevelt and Woodrow Wilson. My next book, Governor, is called Suicide Pact, the Constitution and the Radical Expansion of Presidential Powers After 9/11. And my researchers and I took all of George W. Bush's and Barack Obama's executive orders, at least the ones that we could get our hands on, and we compared them to prevailing Supreme Court opinions, to existing federal law, to the ordinary plain meaning and understanding of the Constitution, and found them grossly wanting. Bush's are very bad. Obama's are far worse. It's almost inconceivable what the next president could do. I could make a suggestion. It's terrifying, and that's probably mass incarceration or mass disappearance of peoples, sort of like the governments that we fought wars against, so that those things would not happen here. They might happen here by a popularly elected yet tyrannical president.
Judge, you sound worried.
Well, I am worried, Governor. And one of the reasons I'm worried is an argument that you and I have made together. I remember a wonderful afternoon here in New York City where we appeared before about 450 wildly screaming students at New York University. And I didn't know you were going to be there, and you didn't know I was going to be there, and neither of us knew what the other was going to say, and our comments were nearly identical. And that is this. We don't have a two-party system in the United States. We have a one-party system. It's the big government party. It has a Democrat wing that likes war and deficits and personal welfare and taxes. It has a Republican wing that likes war and deficits and corporate welfare. And they both will do everything they can to stay in power. They're absolutely undevoted, unfaithful to the Constitution. It almost doesn't matter. I mean, unless it's a Jesse Ventura or a Rand Paul or a Ron Paul, it almost doesn't matter who's in the White House. If that person is from the establishment of the two principal branches of the big government party, nothing will change. The emphasis might change and the appearance might change, but the substance will remain the same.
I couldn't agree with you more. And, you know, when you look at the situation with the two parties now, it's you know, they pick your president, you don't. They're both bought off by the same special interest group. It's like I've told people, it's like this year's Super Bowl. If you bet on Seattle and on Denver, you didn't lose, did you? And that's really what it is. They pay off both sides, so it does not matter which side wins because they own them anyway.
You know, before Hillary Clinton started looking 100 years old, and before Chris Christie got caught in a traffic jam at the George Washington Bridge, when it looked like the two of them were going to be the nominees, my boss said to me, "Hey, Judge, what's the difference between a Chris Christie presidency and a Hillary Clinton presidency?" And I answered very quickly, the size of the tax increase. That's about the only difference between what the Republican establishment wants and what the Democratic establishment wants. Look, the Patriot Act. the most abominable piece of legislation since the Alien and Sedition Acts, the one on which is based the NSA spying, the one on which is based the ability of FBI agents to write their own search warrants, was enacted by a Republican Congress and a Republican president. Of course, it's been extended and made far more avaricious under a president, but the establishment of both parties are the same when it comes to the power of the government over the individual. Individuals are dispensable to the Republican and Democratic establishments in the government.
Let me ask you this. What's your take on Edward Snowden?
I think that Edward Snowden is an American hero. I think that Edward Snowden was faced with two oaths that he took. One was to keep secret the information that he learned in his work, and the other was to preserve, protect, defend, and uphold the Constitution of the United States. One of those oaths stemmed from a statute, the statute that created the NSA. The other stemmed from the Constitution. When they're in conflict with each other, you obey the higher oath, the one that comes from the greater authority. And that's what he did. He decided that he could not preserve, protect, and defend and uphold the Constitution of the United States without revealing to the American people the most massive, systematic conspiracy, secret conspiracy, to violate guaranteed fundamental liberties in the history of the country, and he exposed it. Even people who like this spying, even good people that you and I know that like this spying, which you and I condemn, are happy that we know about it, and we would never know about it without the personal courage and tremendous fidelity to human freedom of Edward Snowden. I wish he could come back here and be a free person and receive a hero's welcome, and I'd be in that parade with you and all the people watching us now cheering him on, Governor.
I'll tell you, absolutely I would. Now, it started with 9/11. It was bad under Bush, and Obama's making it even worse, isn't he, the spying and all that? When are we going to stop this stuff where the government can hide things under national security? And let me throw this question at you. How come it's not against the law for a government person when they violate the Constitution that they're not brought up on charges?
Well, because the Obama administration will not prosecute someone from the Bush administration, because the Obama administration does not want to be prosecuted by fill in the blank, whatever administration succeeds President Obama. This has been one of the dirty little secrets of government for years. Oh, occasionally they'll prosecute a congressman for taking a bribe or cops for beating somebody up, and they should do that. But for the most part, high-level people in the government are protected by their successors, and they all know that. They virtually operate as a war unto themselves. I wrote a terrifying book called Constitutional Chaos, What Happens When the Government Breaks Its Own Laws. Jesse, forgive me, Governor, it's unbelievable what the government does and gets away with. Bribing witnesses in a trial in which the defendant was a federal judge charged with bribery, and they bribed witnesses to testify against him, and he was convicted and eventually acquitted when the bribes became known. The government is lawless and does not believe that the laws that it has written to govern us apply to it when it enforces those laws.
Judge, when you break it all down, I think the basic problem is this, and I've been harping on it on this show from day one when I started it, is the fact that we as the people have forgotten that we're the boss. We're supposed to be in charge, not them. They're supposed to work for us. Do you concur with that?
Yes. Yes, when I had that wonderful show of late memory on which you happily appeared, Freedom Watch, every closing argument was opened with, does the government work for us or do we work for the government? The answer is obvious, that the government works for us, yet it treats us as if we work for the government, because its attitude doesn't change no matter who the president is, and the bureaucracy never changes no matter who the president is. We really need somebody in the White House like Rand Paul and an attitude in the Congress like yours and mine to return to small government principles. I'll give you a little bit of hope, Governor, and that is when the Edward Snowden revelations came out, a very unusual combination of members of Congress was put together in the House. The young libertarian hero, arguably successor to Ron Paul, named Justin Amash, and an old Democratic liberal lion named John Conyers, both congressmen from Michigan, put together a coalition that missed by 5 votes in the House of Representatives, of gutting by 50% the budget of the NSA. And Congressman Amash told me he thinks it will pass the next time around. That might happen on President Obama's watch if these revelations keep coming. And Snowden's people tell me, and I suspect you, that they're going to keep coming, and there's some big ones still out there that we haven't gotten to yet.
Well, I hope that it does happen because, as I've stated on many, many occasions, that the Constitution and the Bill of Rights are the fabric that holds the country together, and you know this as well as I do. Those are the laws of the land, and government should not have the ability to bypass those laws on convenience alone or because something makes it uncomfortable to live by those laws. You must live by those laws.
Why shouldn't General Clapper be prosecuted for perjury? He lied under oath to a Senate committee, to a senator, Senator Ron Wyden, who asked him if the government was amassing massive amounts of information about massive people. He said no. They gave him an opportunity to correct what he said, and he didn't correct it. Is there an exception to in the perjury statutes for officials of the government? Of course not. Will he be prosecuted by the Obama administration? No way. Will the fill-in-the-blank administration that succeeds President Obama ever go after him? Absolutely not, for the reasons we articulated. They want the same immunity for themselves.
You know, Judge, I've made this statement. I want to hear your take on it. I've told people that I believe I could win the presidency on one issue and one issue alone. And you know what that issue is? I've stated that I believe with the public sentiment the way it is today, that if I ran for president and had ballot access in all 50 states and was allowed in the debates and everything, let's say that's a given, I would run on the issue of challenging the American people with the opportunity to elect their first president since George Washington, who does not, I repeat, does not belong to a political party.
That would be a great program, Governor. You know what? It's not too late. There are millions of people that agree with you on that. I'll be there waving and cheering you on. I might even try and jump on your coattails.
Well, no, and Judge, I firmly believe with today you could win on that issue if you challenge the American people. Let's throw a wrench into this whole system. Let's elect the first president since George Washington who does not belong to a political party. But then the key is this. You have to warn the public that these two parties are going to punish you for doing this. They're going to punish you because they put their parties before they do the country. And so people have to be prepared to feel some pain in which to achieve what they'd want to get done there.
At the risk of getting a little too in the weeds, one of the most important things you mentioned in the preliminaries that you stated, if this could happen, if this could happen, you could win. One of the if thises was participate in the debates, because in the first 24 years of those debates, they were run by the League of Women Voters.
Yeah.
And you could participate. Today, I think your viewers, I know you know this because we've talked about it, but your viewers should know that the debates are run by the Republican and the Democratic National Committees. They will never voluntarily permit a Jesse Ventura in those debates, because if they did, it would be the end of their era of dominance.
Oh, without a doubt. Judge, when I was in Minnesota, they made that mistake. I was polling 10% at the primary 7 weeks later because I was allowed to debate. I was the governor of Minnesota. They're not going to let that happen again. They're not going to let that happen.
Unfortunately, I think you're right.
Yeah, no, they're not going to because they control it. You know how nice it must be if you look at this in the context of a football game. Imagine your team gets the referees too.
Right. And your team gets to move the goalposts.
Yeah, you can move the goalposts and you get the referees too, plus you can change the rules at halftime.
Unbelievable. And you own the audience.
You know, I got to say this, Judge, The Daily Show took you to task recently about your comments on the Civil War, when you stated that the Civil War was unnecessary and that, the historical consensus of that war is inaccurate. Explain yourself on that one.
Well, my argument was that the southern states seceded because they feared Lincoln the tyrant. My argument was that it was not necessary for Abe Lincoln to unleash a war which killed more Americans than all combined. The latest statistics estimate about 850,000 human beings. My argument was that the war was not fought for slavery, that it wasn't determined that the North wanted to free the slaves until they did so for military reasons halfway through the war. And my argument was it would have been a lot cheaper for Lincoln to have condemned the slaves. I'm talking about condemnation in the legal sense, which meant the federal government would have owned them, paid for them, and set them free. because it was done lawfully in France, in Brazil, in Puerto Rico, and in Great Britain, throughout all of Europe, and the tide against slavery was coming. Well, the progressives went wild. Now, about The Daily Show, you should know that Jon Stewart and I are very good friends, and he has invited me on. And next Monday, on March 10th, I'll be there to state my case, and we'll have a blast.
Well, good. Well, you're 5 steps ahead of me because he won't have me on. I've tried to get on multiple times, and they won't have me on at all. So
I will do my best to talk to him when I'm there. This will be my either third or fourth time on with him.
Okay. Well, you're 3 or 4 times better than me then, because I can't get on there ever.
I just live in New York, and it's easier for me to get there. You would quintuple his viewership. Are you kidding?
Let me ask you this to finish up. What political changes would you like to see in the next few years, Judge, if you had your way?
Well, I would like to see the government shrink back into the confines of the Constitution, which means the federal government doing only the 16 specific enumerated powers that are given to it under the Constitution. I'd like to see individual liberty, as it was intended by the Bill of Rights, to be respected by everybody in the government. And I would like the government committed to the primacy of the individual over the state. I don't expect any of this to happen in my lifetime or yours, but you gave me a wish list, and that's it. I wouldn't mind seeing Ventura in the White House. That would shake the place.
Oh, you could bet on that, but I got to come back off the grid for that to happen. Larry King said to me, you'd really give up 85 and sunny every day to come back here and do this? But you know,
you can move the White House to Key West.
You know what I said to Larry, though? I said, no, Larry, I don't want to do that. But I said, I love my country. And I said, there's always this little voice in the back of me that always says to me, if not you, then who?
Well, you know, Governor, all the Dick Cheneys and all their pomposity in the world have often overlooked the fact that you and you alone of major political figures in America today risked your life and your comfort and your personal safety for the freedoms that we enjoy. They didn't do it, you did. That puts you a leg above all of them, Governor.
Well,
I'm talking about your years as a Navy SEAL, which those guys couldn't lay a glove on.
Yeah, well, they'll try, though. They did it to John Kerry. They laid a glove on him. Anyway.
Jesse Ventura.
Anyway, Judge Napolitano, I want to thank you very much for being on my show, Off the Grid. You're welcome to come down here off the grid anytime you'd like. And be sure to check out the judge's latest book, Theodore and Woodrow, out now. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Off the Grid. Tell me what you think. The websites are below. And as always, please, I urge you, stay vigilant as citizens.